here, of course, for the opening of the new gazebo, which you can see in front of you here. A special welcome to members of Ian's extended family who are here for the dedication of the gazebo. The gazebo was made possible, of course, because of a very generous bequest by Ian, which was specifically for the provision of seating in the Bushland garden. This celebration is primarily about Ian, so without further ado, I'll read the tribute written by Dennis. Ian Angus Crombie was born in 1946, the oldest of four, and attended Nedlands Primary School and Hollywood Senior High School. He probably found his first love of plants and nature at his uncle Len Bolden's farm at Yeelering, and later working in town for his lawn and garden maintenance business. His careers were quite varied, but working outdoors was probably the thread that connected them. And of course, his defining career was as a horticulturist. He worked in countless places across town, on the East Coast and in the UK, but he'll best be remembered for his 16 years service at Perth Zoological Gardens, where you only need to speak to his former colleagues to know how great his contribution there was. He rarely missed the annual spring wildflower trip to the Badgingarra farm with them. After retiring, an opportunity came up in 2006 to look after a rather run-down 100 acres west of York and to see what he could do about tidying it up. As it turned out, a fellow pupil from school days was leasing the property on one side. Diane O'Hara from the Yeelering district was another neighbour, and the pastor from the Claremont Church lived across the road. His battle with rabbits, snakes, insects was epic, but he got on top and established a rose garden, veggie garden, fruit trees, a nursery for plants and flowers, native seedlings to revegetate the property, installed tracks and fencing, and over time established a comfortable and natural environment to live in. His early wool classing days and stock experience were invaluable for running the merinos. His chooks loved him. Ian settled into York and in no time became more of a local than the locals. He quickly wove himself into the fabric of York, his poems often appearing in the local paper. He had a regular stall at the markets for his plants and flowers. His patronage of the local shops on Avon Terrace for a coffee and crosswords was a daily ritual. At various times he was a member of the York Society, the Wildflower Society, Garden Club, Poetry Club, and when called upon, an advisor to the Shire on their parks and gardens programs. The Bushland Garden project was a keen interest. His prizes in various categories for entries to the York Show and other exhibitions were treasured by him, especially a first prize in the weeds section. In 2012, Ian bought Eliza's cottage and moved into town. Other interests were football, Claremont Tigers, plus an inaugural member of the Eagles, cricket, fishing, Bob Dylan, cryptic crosswords and poetry. If it wasn't horticulture, he probably could have been an accomplished poet. He crafted some beautiful words in his time. Ian was a bonza bloke, easy company, and with a ready humour. This is in quotes. We all deeply miss him. Ian was a very special resident of York and offered so much, a model for all of us who choose to contribute. Thanks, Dennis. Now, just a little bit about Ian and his relationship with the Bushland Garden. A lot of the plants that you see in the Bushland Garden were actually planted by Ian. He spent a lot of time here and we were very grateful for the work that he put in. He told me once that his favourite plants were from the Epacridaceae family, Astrolomas, Leucopogons, etc. For those of you who are not familiar with them, they have delicate bell-shaped flowers and they have the distinction of, in the main, flowering fairly early on in the flowering season, like about May, sometimes even April. I don't think they're actually called a Pachyrdaceae anymore, are they? Where's Audrey? I really wish that our botanical brethren wouldn't keep changing the names of things. It makes life very difficult. Unfortunately, the Pachyrdaceae family is very difficult to propagate. So we have never actually succeeded in propagating any of the Pachyrdaceae family, let alone growing them in the bushland garden. So what we decided to do around Ian's gazebo is plant what is probably the next best thing, which is a whole bunch of eremophilas. Now, eremophilas are very tough plants. They'll stand the clay soils that we've got here in the bushland garden. There's one in flower just there. And there are plenty of others around the bushland garden in flower. So they're scattered in amongst you here are lots of eremophilas. Significant contributors to its actual construction include Bruce McGregor, who provided these bush poles that you see around the outside, Rob Pampling, who turned the bush poles and other materials into the gazebo, Dee Robinson made the fantastic panels that you see around the outside of the gazebo. I think, Dee, you're taking orders? So if anybody's interested, she's the lady to see. Audrey Soul, who looked after the signage and just generally kept things on track. And Stuart Clare from the Hard Grind, who provided the crowning glory. If you look up, you'll see there's a grass tree up on the top of the gazebo. That's really about it from me. I'll finish my ramble. Perhaps if I could now ask Mary Harvey to come up to the microphone and say a few words on behalf of the Garden Club.
Good morning, everyone. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Mary Harvey, previously of the Garden Club, but now I've taken to the City Lights. I was a member and deeply, quite involved with the Garden Club through my time here, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And on behalf of Rosemary, who is the current president, she's asked me to say a few words as I was working as secretary when Ian was actually president. Ian was a member of the Garden Club from what I can see from about 2012 until he actually resigned due to ill health in June 17. He was president from April 16 and then he resigned due to ill health in June 17. Ian's background, as I'm sure you all know, is horticulture, which enabled him to be a fountain of knowledge relating to anything regarding garden, plants, soils and all gardening matters. He was and is greatly missed. Who do we ask about? What can I do? What plant is that? How do you do that? And all those pesky questions that we need an expert to answer, especially at our Garden Club meetings when people bring along a flower or something around and say, do you know what this is? And thank goodness Ian used to be able to answer. He was not only a friendly, genuine person, but also had a quick wit and a wicked sense of humour. He wrote the article monthly for our newsletter that went out to all members, and of course it was full of gardening advice, particularly relevant to York, but also other questions that people aren't asked but he could answer as well. The museum was another project which Ian actually took on, the museum garden that is, and he had us out there. The first job that we had was weeding, and believe it or not, with his quick humour and wit, it made the job quite enjoyable. I think I see someone up there from who actually agrees that was weeding away with me. He also organised the plants, what plants were relevant for the various gardens, because they had Six Seasons gardens and then the cottage garden, and then in conjunction with the people from the museum he actually purchased the plants, and we all got to the happy part of planting them all. So hopefully most of them have survived. Another thing that he actually helped us with and actually instigated was the open day that we had. Down in the Church of Christ Hall, we had an open day starting the year that Ian was actually president, and with his wealth of knowledge in horticultural contacts and that sort of thing, he was able to manage excellent speakers, and he had some wonderful ideas, which our open days turned out to be a wonderful success over the years, and I believe they still are. In fact, there is one coming up on the next Sunday, I think it is, yep. So don't forget to go along and have a look at the gardens that are open. And just in finishing, I'd just like to say that I'm sure it's true of everyone here that Ian is sadly missed by the Garden Club and the whole community of York. He has done so much and been such a bright light in all our lives. Thank you.
I will invite James to come to the microphone.
Hello everyone, thanks Eric. Isn't this wonderful? I know Dad would be absolutely chuffed. He wouldn't have missed something like this. Gardens and people joking around and sitting in the sunshine. It's an absolute honour for me to be here, of course, to cut the ribbon in a moment. A bigger honour for my father, who I'm sure he had absolutely no idea that when he donated some money in his will that he'd have something dedicated to him. That would have been extra special, but of course nothing he would have expected. I'm going to pass over, I'll speak a little bit more in a moment, but I'm going to pass over to my children here, who are each going to read one of Pop's poems. Bonnie is going to read one called Wildflowers.
I love the everlasting, the yellows, pinks and whites, they bristle in the wind, but curl up tight at night. I love the everlasting, carpeting the plains, love to pick a few and place them in a frame. But let's keep them in the wild, for it seems to be so clear that if we all remove them all, there'll be nothing for next year.
And now Beatty's going to read one called My First Plantation.
I was keen to plant some trees to improve my vacant land, so I took 1,000 seedlings to improve the carbon stand. It was in the autumn season, as I paced and placed in drills, the rows directed to the dam at the bottom of the hill. I stood back and admired my toil just before the rain began. The heavens dropped an inch an hour as the trees swept to the dam. The plants mixed with sludge and mud filled my water source. I should have planted along the slope. Lesson 1, my planting course. Following the disaster, I then ripped across the grade. I'd saved about 100 trees, which I stationed with my spade. All was well for a week or so, no runoffs down the slant. But the rabbits had infringed and ate half the blooming plants. I then fenced the ruddy paddock with posts and rabbit wire. I may have lost 2 battles, but at least I am a trier. The winter rains excelled upon my few remaining trees. Some grew tall and thin and bent easily with the breeze. The winds blew strong and cold, half the saplings snapped. Some lay horizontal, their bark was cracked and chapped. I was now down to 12 plants. Yes, not a great result, but I pondered long and hard to create my new assault. I had a large old rose bush with branches long and straight, so I cut to required lengths to utilize as stakes. I drove and tied these stems beside the bending gums to encourage upright growth before the summer comes. Alas, the seedlings died. They defied my restoration. But the stakes took root and thrived to provide a rose plantation.
Thanks, kids. That was so good. I was digging through. I've got a lot of paperwork of Dad's, which I need to go through one day, and I was looking for some poems that the kids could read, and I found something that I've never seen before, which was from his years studying at Tech in Mount Lawley back in the late 70s, and it was a certificate for student with best results in wildflower trials, as presented by the Wildflower Society of West Australia. I thought, very strange, big circle. Before I cut the ribbon, again, thank you so much everyone for coming here, his friends and family, and the Wildflower Society, the York branch here, who are obviously such wonderful friends of his. Sorry. I'm really surprised. I'm emotional. I thought this was just going to be fun. I planned on cutting this ribbon with Dad's old secateurs. The dry run didn't work. They didn't go through, so it's scissors, I'm afraid. Come and chat to us all, of course. Hopefully everyone can mingle this afternoon and talk about Dad and not talk about this wonderful garden. I think on behalf of the family and friends of Dad's, we can't thank the society enough, because it's just such a wonderful honour. Thank you.
Thanks, James. That was lovely. The gazebo is open.
Thank you.